evening to everybody, and thank you for joining us. Obviously, you've got a new book coming out, which is the reason that we've asked you to join us this evening. And it's going to be a Felix Leiter book. Is there anything else you can actually tell us about it at the moment, other than the fact it's it's going to be about the character of Felix Leiter?
Well, I can tell you a little bit. Um, it takes place in between Live and Let Die and Diamonds Are Forever, the Fleming books, and it's set in that time period. So it, covers Felix's rehabilitation after the shark attack and how he then, sort of loses his job at CIA and becomes a detective at Pinkerton's. And
Hmm.
the story is his first big Pinkerton's um, job, and it's a spy story, because in the early 50s, and it takes place in America, so it's all very Cold War paranoia, uh, nuclear secrets leaking out, that kind of thing, because a lot of that was going on in the early 50s.
Okay. Um, so when did this? When did you first get the idea for doing a lighter? Um,
I'm
um,
sorry, could you repeat that question? I
when
had
did
a little
when did
glitch.
yeah, sorry, when did you first have the idea for actually doing a entire story based around Felix?
Oh well, I've always loved Felix. I've always had a sort of a identification with him because he is a Texan and I am a Texan. I've always loved him, even when I first read the books. And then in the movies he's kind of been inconsistent, but I'm not here to say anything negative toward the actors, the fine actors who have played Felix. But I've always wanted to see a story about Felix, his own tale. What's he doing? What's he doing over there in America when he's not with Bond? And I had actually pitched it a couple of times to IFP after my tenure as the Bond author, and they just weren't ready for that. It wasn't in their game plan at the time. But lately, as you've probably noticed, they've started to do some spin-offs. They're the Kim Sherwood's Double O series, and there's a novel by Basim Khan coming out about Q. And so I thought, well, maybe they'd be open to it now. So I did pitch it again, and bingo, green light. They were very excited about it. And they're also doing a little experiment with their own publishing arm. Ian Fleming Publications has become a publisher, so that's why we're doing it first as an ebook serial over the summer. That was what they wanted to do, and we're going to try that out. And then the print book will come out in October.
So how often is it going to be coming out as a series? Is it once a month?
It's every 2 weeks.
Every two.
So the first episode drops May 27th. And then if you have, say, a Kindle or a Nook or whatever device you're reading it on, uh, the file will automatically get updated in 2 weeks. And you need to have your device the settings say automatic updates enabled. And then overnight, I guess, I'm hoping that the file will just update and the next episode will be added on to the file. So it's 10 episodes, so it's going to be, 20 weeks.
20 weeks, and then the it's all combined into a an actual paperback as well.
Right. Uh-huh.
Fabulous. So what's the date of the publish of the actual paperback rather than the
I think they said October 2nd. I think that might be in flux, but right now it's October 2nd.
I mean, you mentioned some of the actors, or you mentioned actors who played Felix, and you didn't want to be derogatory about any of them. But is there any who would actually be your favorite of all the actors who've
Uh,
played Felix?
the one the one who resembles Fleming's Felix looks wise would be Rick Van Nutter. So I would say he's probably my favorite of all the Felixes, but I don't think
I'm very
any
much.
of them really captured, none of them captured the tone, the his personality. Because Felix in the Fleming novels, if you read them, he's very, very buoyant and upbeat. He's a joker. He's the kind of guy who would, come up from behind Bond on the street and stick his hook in his back and go, stick him up, as a joke. He's always sort of mansplaining America to Bond and uh, taking him out to all the bars, the fancy bars and restaurants, and telling him what to eat. Telling him, order this, here's a drink you're going to love. We're going up to Harmon. You're going to have a good time. And he's always, he just seems like he's like the life of the party in many ways whenever Bond is with him. And that's the kind of character I wanted to portray. He's just a kind of a goofball, but a really smart goofball. A brave and tough goofball, but he's got a sense of humor.
I mean, I agree that they haven't actually managed to capture Fleming's Felix on film, but I do think probably David Hedison perhaps is maybe the closest in terms of the actual personality, but still not quite there. But
Actually, as far as the tone and the buoyancy and the sort of kidding around, Cease Linder kind of captured that in Goldfinger because he's always got a grin on his face all through the movie. He's just like, "That's my James," and stuff like that. He just doesn't look like Felix. He doesn't. He almost seems too old to be Felix. Um, David Henson's a great actor. I like him a lot. I think he was just too serious. He was never like this jokey kind of guy. He was never laughing much.
I mean,
Remember
he's quite light-hearted in Live and Let Die. I think
what's that?
he's quite light-hearted in Live and Let Die. I think.
Yeah, I guess a little bit. Yeah, a
Mm,
little bit. He's mostly like schooling James in Live and Let Die
yeah.
for messing up stuff, crashing things and stuff. Oh, he's like pulling his hair a lot in that in Live and Let Die.
Yeah, that is true. Also, the what does he say? How is Mrs. Bell? Intensive care, but she'll pull through. Now there's no need for name calling.
Oh dear.
does anyone have any questions for Raymond while we've obviously got him here? If you have, if you can use the raised hands function on, which is one of your options, I think, under participants usually, or chat. Daffod, I've got you.
Sure.
Easy.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very much for letting me be on. Raymond, I was wondering if it was okay to ask you. In the Bond community, we always like to have these kind of what if this happened in the Bond movies, and these sort of original ideas that they have, like what if Sean Connery did On Her Majesty's Secret Service? What if Terence Young did Goldfinger? What if Dalton did do his third and fourth movie? What if Pierce did his fifth movie? Or what if Spectre or No Time to Die didn't go through these production problems or whatever? Is there one like alternative idea that the Bond filmmakers had that you really would like to have seen come true at all? You can only have one.
Well, I would have liked the '60s Blofeld to have been consistent,
Yep.
and for You Only Live Twice and Honor Majesty Secret Service to have been reversed and portrayed more faithfully to the books. Um, Interestingly, I mean, I never felt Blofeld was cast correctly in those days. Um, I, in the late '60s, I think my pick for Blofeld would have been Marlon Brando.
Hmm. Wonderful.
He would have been fantastic.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Double Blofeld. Something like that. I don't know.
Well, he wouldn't have talked like Vito, but
No.
but if you look at pictures of him from the late '60s, he looks pretty, formidable, and if you put him against Sean Connery, that would have been just dynamite.
Reflections in a Golden Eye or something, or One Eye Jacks or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, nice one. Thank you very much.
sure.
Chris Schofield, you've got a question as well, I think, there.
Yes, thank you, Philip, and hello, Raymond.
Hi, Chris.
I was just curious. After when you were given, they were chosen to continue the Bond novels, you decided to take them back to more of the Fleming era. How did that sort of fare when you were doing the film versions of the books that you were writing?
I didn't take my Bond novels back to the Fleming era. They were set in the 90s and the 2000s.
Right. I sort of meant in the style wise, than opposed to Gardner's writing, if you will.
All right. Well, actually, right before I started, you know who Peter Jansen Smith is. He was the chairman of Glidrose. It was called Glidrose at the time. Now it's Ian Fleming Publications. Peter was the boss. And we had a conversation, what should we do? Should I stay in contemporary times like John Gardner, just carry on from him? Or should we go back to the 60s or the 50s, And we were in the process of talking about that. And then GoldenEye, the movie, came out. This would have been November 95 when I was asked. And GoldenEye came out, and it was such a big hit that Peter then just said, you know what, let's keep it contemporary. Let's stay in sync with the films. And in fact, why don't you make your M a woman? to mirror what they were doing. And those were my really only directives. And except for, he did say, if you can kind of bring in a more cinematic style, have it kind of have the tone and feel of the movies, but still be faithful to Fleming's books. Keep the spirit of Fleming. And I said, well, yeah, I can do that, but I want my Bond to have all of his vices. I want him to still smoke and drink and womanize and all that. And they said, well, if you can make that work, sure, go ahead. So that's what I did.
And what was the difference between writing from your own perspective than writing? I presume, did they give you sort of like an abridged version of the screenplay to turn into the?
Oh, for the novelizations?
Yeah.
Yes, they actually gave me the screenplay. This would have been in the May of the particular years. So for Tomorrow Never Dies, in May of 97, Eon would give me the screenplay as it existed at that day. They were still filming at the time and still rewriting the script. So every day I would get new pages fast while I was writing. And there was a big difference between writing the novelizations and the original novels. The original novels I had a whole year to write.
Mm-hmm.
The novelizations I had 8 weeks to write. So they were rush jobs because the publisher had to have the finished book 6 months before the publication date, which was usually the same day as the movie release. So that would have been November of 97. So I had to turn in the book by July of 97. And I would only start sometime in May. So we had May and June to do the book.
And
that was the same for World Is Not Enough and Die Another Day.
Is it a difficult process to write from someone's screenplay but also have your own mark on it, if you will?
No, it was a lot easier than the original novels, I can tell you that. Because the original novels, I'm creating the plot and I'm going through, all the red herrings and the twists and turns and is this going to work? Is that going to work? Who is this character? What is the plot? Whereas for the novelizations, you're given all that. You're given the plot. You're given the characters. You're given the dialogue. You just have to flesh it out and turn it into prose. And if you turned in a screenplay into prose verbatim, you'd be about 30,000 words too short. So you do have to flesh it out. I got permission to add some new scenes to the story. For example, in Tomorrow Never Dies, there's a whole chapter about Wei Lin and her background before she goes to Hamburg to meet Bond and to the scene where she meets Bond. So things like that. I think I put some stuff in World Is Not Enough and Die Another Day too. I usually you know uh, communicated with the screenwriters to get permission. Like, okay, this is what I have in mind. Blah blah blah. What do you think? And they we'll get back to you tomorrow. And then they come back to me and say, yeah, okay, you're approved. That kind of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you.
You're muted, Phil.
You're on mute, Phil.
I am muted. I'm no longer muted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing in your novels and novelizations, obviously female M is Barbara Maudsley. Was that a name you came up with, or was that actually taken
Yes.
from?
I came up with that name because they didn't have a name for her. And I wanted a name, especially for in the Facts of Death, because the story really kind of deals with the death of the man she's seeing. Um, I thought it was important that her name be revealed.
Yeah.
So that's the one I came up with, and everybody was fine with it. You know, we didn't hear it in the film, so
Was Barbara a nod to Barbara Broccoli?
no, it was not.
Ah, right. Just wondering.
Do you have another question?
I really don't remember how I came up with the name, but it certainly was not a nod to Barbara Broccoli.
You've also got your hand up for another question, Stephen. So do you want to?
Yeah, and I was just wondering, sort of, how did you get into Bond initially?
Oh, well, way back in the 1960s, I was growing up in a town in West Texas, and I was 9 years old, and I was next door. There was these two girls that were maybe a year younger than me. We were, getting together. They were friends. We were playing a board game or something, and I heard this music coming from the living room. This brassy, dynamic, incredible music. And I went in there. What is this music? What is this? What is this? And I picked up the record album, and it was Goldfinger, the soundtrack. And I went, what is this? And the mom of the two girls, who I kid you not, her name was M, the letter M. That's what people called her. It stood for Mary or something like that. I don't know what it was, but everybody called her M. And that's no joke. But anyway, she said, oh, that's the new movie playing downtown. And I loved it so much, I went out and bought the record. And I went, oh, wow, what is this? And I'm looking at the pictures on the record and I'm going, and so I went home and I told my dad, Dad, we got to go see Goldfinger. And my dad kind of went, we do? I think he kind of wanted to see it too. So he took me and we saw it together. And, at 9 years old, seeing it on the big screen, first release, you got to imagine what an impact that had. It was like, seeing Star Wars at the age of 9 or something like that. Well, anyway, then about 5 months later in the summer, this would have been in January or February of 65. So then around June or July that same year, the double bill of Dr. No and From Russia with Love came to our town. So within 6 months, I saw the first three movies on the big screen, and I was corrupted for life. And by that time, I was picking up the paperbacks, the Ian Fleming paperbacks. Even though I was 9 years old, I was reading Ian Fleming. And, maybe some of it went over my head, but I could grasp the stories. I understood enough of it to really appreciate it and like it, and also recognize that it was very different from the movies. But so I started reading all the books and keeping up with all the movies from then on, and that's how it happened.
And which one's your favorite book and movie?
Which are my favorites?
Really?
From Russia with Love on both ends, the book and the film. Yeah.
It's a good choice.
Thank you, Steve. Matthew, you've got your hand up as well.
Hi. Thank you for coming, sir.
Sure.
Steven kind of stole my question, but um, let me think of another one. I'll be back.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Next up, then it is Chris. There you are.
Mr. Benson, it's a pleasure to listen to you. Very interesting. Um, my question isn't directly just about Bond. It's as an author, what brought you to become an author, and do you see yourself now as a genre author, or was this coincidentally that you came into Bond? Tell us a bit about how that all came about.
Okay. Well, my entry into being a published author is very unorthodox. I didn't set out to be a writer. I was a theater major. I wanted to be a stage director, and I did get a degree in college in theater directing. And I moved to New York City and started directing off Broadway and off way off Broadway, and also composing music. I'm a musician and a composer, and I would collaborate with playwrights who were writing musicals, and they would write the lyrics, and I would put music to their lyrics. And I wrote
Wow.
several musicals that were done on stage. And I was doing all that in the late '70s, early '80s in New York, and I didn't have any plan to be a writer, but there was a moment. I guess it was after when For Your Eyes Only, the movie came out,
Mhm.
kind of reinvigorated my interest in Bond because I recognized when I saw that movie that it had a lot more Fleming material than of late,
Mm. Yes.
and it kind of got me excited again. I pulled out my paperbacks and started like reading the books again. And then John Gardner's first book came out around the same
Hmm.
time. So suddenly I was excited about James Bond again. I hadn't been in over a decade. Um, and there was a moment when some friends of mine and I were sitting around a table at somebody's apartment, and the question came up, if you had to write a book, what would you write? And we all gave answers. And my answer was, well, I'd like to have a coffee table book that has a biography of Ian Fleming, a history of the James Bond thing, and analyses and critiques of all the books and all the movies. Because there wasn't anything like that at the time. There were a
Hmm.
couple of books on the movies. There was some out of print
Yeah.
biographies. There was some out of print things like the Kingsley Amis James Bond dossier, but they were long gone. Um, so I wanted something, I wanted it for my bookshelf. So I figured, well, I'm going to have to write it. And
Excellent.
I started, and when I said that, my friends who knew I liked James Bond so much, they all went, "Ooh, you should do that. You know a lot about James Bond."
Hmm.
And so I'm thinking about it. And I go, well, could I do it? Do I even have the ability to do it? Um, so I had a friend of mine that had published a joke book. And I said, how did you go about doing that? And then he said, kind of told me that he submitted a proposal to an editor and all this stuff. And I said, well, can I meet
Yeah.
your editor? And he actually put me in touch with her. So I told her what I wanted to do. And she said, well, you need to write a proposal. And she gave me an outline for a proposal. She said, take it home, write it up, and give it back to me, and we'll see what we can do. So I wrote up the proposal, gave it to her, and the next day I got a call and said, you've got a contract to write
Fantastic.
this book. I know. And of course, it took me 3 years
Mm.
to do it. I didn't expect it would take that long because, at that time I had a day job. I was still doing theater at night and on weekends. So I had
Yeah.
to fit in writing the James Bond Bedside Companion when I could. And then I also traveled to England in 1982 to interview a lot of people that knew Ian Fleming, like Ivor Bryce, and I got to know Ernest Cuneo in America, and I got to know Peter Jansen Smith at Glidrose
Hmm.
Publications while I was in England, and he kind of liked what I was doing and gave me permission to use the quotes from the books and stuff. And then finally the book comes out in 1984, and I guess the Fleming people liked it, and it got good reviews. It sold well. I got involved in the American Fan Club. I started writing, articles for their magazine, Bondage,
Mhm.
and appearing at like conventions and stuff as the author of the James Bond
Yeah.
companion. Um, and then I sort of fell into the computer gaming world. That
Ah,
was
yeah.
an accident as well because of the bedside companion. Um, I got a literary agent, and the agent called not long after the publication of the book, and they said, "Are you into games?" And I said, "Yeah, I like games. I like board games, and I'd been playing the James Bond role playing game. I knew the
Ah,
designers. They lived in New York, and so my agent said, "Well, I've got this company that's designing text adventure computer games, and they have a James Bond license. And I thought of you. They're looking for a writer." I went, "Okay, sure, yeah, I'd be very interested."
mhm.
So from then on, for the next 10 years, I suddenly found myself as a writer designer of adventure games, computer games. And that's really kind of where I honed my fiction writing, because I had to come up with these huge, complicated plots that had lots of paths and
Mhm.
what ifs and what else and all that kind of stuff, and dialogue for characters that you talk to in the games.
Mhm.
And I did that up until that's what I was doing in 95 when I got the call out of the blue from Peter to see if I wanted to write James Bond, because John Gardner
Wow.
had told him that he didn't want to do it anymore. So they had
Mhm.
thought of me, out of the blue. I'm very
Fantastic.
grateful.
So do you
So
see
yeah,
yourself?
that's an unorthodox way of
Yeah.
getting into publishing. And then James Bond then opened up a lot of other doors, and then I, became a, solely a writer, freelance writer. I quit my day job and um,
Mhm.
wrote my own stuff as well as other tie-in works. Like I worked for Tom Clancy a couple of years and Metal
Yeah.
Gear Solid a couple of years and doing my own stuff. And then now I'm back in bondage.
Do you see yourself as a genre writer, or is it coincidental that that is where the work keeps coming from? So I'll do that.
Well, I guess I've always been interested in mysteries and thrillers, so that's what I write.
Mhm.
And those are the kind of books I like to read. So that's what I like to write. I'm not really a science fiction writer. I've written some science fiction, but I don't think it's very good. Uh, um, just about everything I've written has been in that genre. So yeah, I guess that's where
Mhm.
I am.
Fascinating. Thank you very much for this very detailed
Sure.
answer.
Uh, you mentioned the James Bond role-playing game, which I was a big fan of in the 80s and into the 90s as well.
I
Um,
was too.
and it was You and Live Twice 2, Back of Beyond, I remember, was one that you actually broke.
Yeah, that was one I wrote. Yes.
And there's aspects of that that you then, I think, took for your first Bond novel, Zero Minus 10, with the Australian. And then
Yeah, I used the sort of Outback sequence. I stole from myself,
yeah.
and it was all owned by the same, conglomerate, so it didn't matter.
I'm
Um,
glad you didn't take yourself to court.
Um,
I changed up. I changed up enough of it that it, wasn't a verbatim thing. But yeah, it was just the same kind of idea. Let's put Bond in the Outback and have him survive.
but were you actually going to be involved in any more of the role-playing adventures? They're
No, because
quite well
that
planned.
that that was at the tail end. That was the tail end. They were already starting to kind of go out of business around the time that one came out.
Yeah. You also mentioned that you wrote for theatre, and one of my holy grails would be to get a hands on your play of Casino Royale.
You and everybody else.
Script for that.
Um,
Is there anything you can actually tell us about that?
well, I can tell you the facts that have already been out there. Yes, I was still, the Bedside Companion had come out, and I was still doing theater. Peter and one of his colleagues was in New York, and we were having lunch, and I just threw it out there. I said, have you ever thought about doing a Bond stage play? And I think, of all the books, Casino Royale is the only one that could be adapted to the stage because it's mostly interiors. Not a lot of actions with cars and fights and well, maybe fights, but certainly not airplanes and boats and things like that. And coincidentally, that was the only title to which they could have the rights of the play because, Eon had all the other titles. Casino Royale, the film rights was tied up with Columbia, but Glidrose did have the stage rights. So they said, yeah, why don't we do that? Why don't you give it a shot? Write a play. We'll see. And they actually paid me. They paid me to write it. Then once it was written, I mounted a staged reading of it in New York, off Broadway, and they were going to come. Peter and his colleague were going to come see it, but something happened and they couldn't come. And we did the reading. The audience loved it. And so I just was kind of like waiting, what's going to happen. And then for some reason, they decided they didn't want to pursue a stage play. They didn't feel like James Bond was a theater stage play property medium. So the play just kind of languished. And then around the time that Eon acquired the rights of Casino Royale, they acquired everything. So now, basically, Ian Fleming Publications has the publication rights to my play. Eon has the the stage rights of my play. I own the paper it's typed on. So
Yeah.
it's probably, never going to get done.
I'm sorry.
It's a shame because I mean I would love to actually just read it to find out how you'd actually managed to do it. But David McNulty, you also got your hand up there to ask a question, so we can bring you into it.
Hi Raymond, pleasure to talk to you. I was just wondering, as a musician, I mean, I'm a pianist myself, so by profession. So I was just wondering, apart from what you just mentioned about your theater background, do you play classical, or are you into jazz, or is there?
Well, I play a lot of rock and roll and my own stuff, and a lot of movie music. Those are probably my three main genres of what I play. And I for many years I was a concert level pianist, and I would play at venues. I would be hired to play for 4 hours. For example, the Chicago airport is O'Hare Airport. They hired me to play at a bar for 4 hours a day.
Oh. That can be. I've done that myself. I mean, so it's crazy when people keep coming up to you and they're having a few drinks and they say, "Play this and play this thing for me."
Putting $10 bills in the tip jar too. If I'd play Hotel California,
totally. But it's good money. I think it's actually.
Yeah, it was. But the last 2 or 3, during the pandemic, I don't know if you knew this, but I uploaded 100 videos to my YouTube channel of me playing the piano at home.
Okay.
And they're some of my better pieces. And after doing that, for some reason, I developed what they call lateral epicondylitis in my arms, in my elbows. And I now can't play longer than 20, 30 minutes without it starting to really hurt bad. And it's chronic. I've done everything you can possibly do, acupuncture and dry needling and shots and anything except surgery, which is not really recommended. But I can't play like I used to. But,
that's a real shame.
I have records of it in the cloud. I have records of me playing. So
that's because I do remember, because we are Facebook friends, and I remember seeing some of your videos when you posted them, and yeah, they're brilliant, So,
thank you.
Do you? I mean, have you got a favorite? I mean, obviously, you've got the theater background, but have you a favorite composer? Like, say, if you were obviously classical, or you were doing your.
Probably my favorite composer is Ennio Morricone.
Okay.
Composer.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I love his stuff. But as far as, contemporary stuff, I'm a big Beatles fan. I love Jethro Tull. I love, I grew up in the late 60s, early 70s. So when progressive rock was big. So all those guys like Yes and Jethro Tull and Gentle Giant and King Crimson, I love all those guys. I still do. There's a lot. There was the group down in Canterbury, the Canterbury people like Soft Machine and Caravan, Robert Wyatt, um, people like that. I love Hatfield in the North. Hope that is all going over your heads. But this was all 1970s progressive stuff out of England that was kind of cultish, but underground, but well loved and still loved today.
Okay. Well, like when you started to write, then was it a big decision to? Did you still like do some stuff with the theater, or did you was it just a gradual shift, or?
I kind of left theater in the 90s. Once I became involved in the computer gaming industry, that took up pretty much all your time. It was a day job as well as a night job. I mean, you would be at the office, after hours and crunch. Maybe you've heard of crunch mode, which was a thing in the computer gaming industry. We were always in crunch mode, it seemed. So yeah, I kind of left behind theater. I mean, every now and then I stick my toe in it, but I still go to the theater and still enjoy it. But I now at my age, I just don't want to do it.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I miss it, but it's a lot of hard work and for very little payback.
Yeah. Well, that's. I mean, it's even for the actors. Like I saw, it was a Giant the other night, and with John Lithgow. In it's in West End here. We have it's like based on Roald Dahl, and I think that they're on for 7 times a week basically, and it's obviously for the music. But I was just wondering, what would be your favorite soundtracks of Bond? Which of the unofficial?
Oh, my favorite. Yeah. I love John Barry. He's up there too. On Her Majesty's Secret Service is probably my favorite full soundtrack, closely followed by You Only Live Twice.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had to pick the quintessential Bond main title theme, if it's not the James Bond theme, that was used in Dr. No, then it would be Goldfinger.
Okay. How about Michel Legrand's score for Never Say Never?
I can rank that pretty low.
Yeah.
Low toward the bottom.
Yes. Well, that's
Although
great.
I have a great admiration for Herb Alpert. I was being a '60s kid, the Tijuana Brass, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass was on my turntable a lot in those days, and therefore, the Casino Royale '67 soundtrack is one of my favorites.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I absolutely adore that.
Yeah, no, it's great. I had the great pleasure to hear him. He was in Ronnie Scott's jazz club about a year ago, and he played a little snippet from Casino Royale, and he was there with his wife, obviously, Danny Hall, and she sang a bit. So yeah, he's still going strong at, I don't know, 90.
Yeah, he just came through Chicago. I didn't get to go see him, but yeah, I know.
So sorry, it just occurred to me, you wrote Casino Royale the play, and you write your own music. We could have had Casino Royale the musical.
Yeah, I don't think Bond should be a musical.
Didn't
magazine.
In your interview with Dalton, didn't he bring it up that Casino Royale would work as a good play?
I'm sorry?
In your interview with Dalton, didn't he bring up that Casino Royale would work well as a play?
Yeah, I think we did talk about that. We talked a lot about theater when I interviewed him. That was a really nice interview. We were together a long time, and the fact that I was a theater person and I would talk about other stuff besides Bond, he really enjoyed that. In fact, when his handler came in and said, "All right, time's up. The next person's waiting," he actually went, "I want to talk to this guy longer." So. That went really well.
You had your hand up, Owen. Is there anything else that you want to ask?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I would like to say to Raymond, thank you very much. 3 years ago, when Cinema Retro put up one of my articles saying that Connery's Bond wasn't that great, you defended it because I was getting a lot of hate mail around that time. So thank you for that.
Wait, what? Remind me.
I wrote a piece criticizing Connery's portrayal as Bond, and I was getting a lot of hate mail. And you said, no, this is a well-written piece, and it's making an argument that I don't agree with, but it's not clickbait. And I want to say thank you for that.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to say I don't remember that, but if I did that, then okay. You're welcome.
Okay, well, thanks. Okay, but going back to your interview with Dalton, because License to Kill is my personal favorite, and Dalton is a stunning actor, and it's a wonderful interview. There's that great quote where you ask him if he did Pinter, and he says, "No, I haven't. I'd love to." And what do you think his qualities as a stage actor brought to Bond, which at that point was seen as, very frissony TV actors, like with Moore and Connery, very modelly? Do you think he brought an excellence given his
Yes. He brought subtext to the acting. You know what subtext is, folks? That's when you say something and you really mean something else. That's subtext. And you brought up Harold Pinter. Pinter is full of subtext. It's the subtext is what's important in a Harold Pinter play, not what the characters say. Like a character could say, "Go get me a beer," when they're really mean, "I wish you'd get the hell out of this room." That kind of thing. I just saw a Harold Pinter play, Betrayal, in Chicago with Robert Sean Leonard and Helen Hunt. And another guy. It was Betrayal. Terrific. Harold Pinter is my favorite playwright, by the way. Dalton,
fantastic.
I love Sean Connery. Sorry, but I do. He's for me. I grew up with him. He was my first Bond, and he'll always be my number one Bond. But Dalton is my number two Bond, mainly because I felt like he really captured more the Fleming Bond.
Oh yeah, outstanding.
Anything else?
Was he? I interviewed Frank Rodham, who worked with him, and he said that Dalton is a complete gentleman. Was that your impression of speaking to?
Absolutely, absolutely. He was very nice and just very warm and if you're talking about stuff he's interested in, anybody really is going to be nice. I'm sure a lot of those press junkets could be really awful for a lot of these actors who are just answering the same questions over and over and over and over. So I think, when I met him, it was kind of fresh for him. So
thank you.
Stuart Basinger, another one of our American members. What would you call you? Participants is the
Stuart. Well, hello.
Oh, hello, Raymond.
I know this guy.
I'm one of the troublemakers in Raymond's life. Speaking of bondage, this magazine here might be remembering of a certain article that Raymond wrote, which was the first time I heard about Raymond when I was just a wee little lad of maybe about 4 or 5 years old. No, I'm just kidding. This article that he was writing, so I can get that up there.
Was that 45?
About the Lilly Library.
Visit to the Lilly Library. Yeah, I think this is the first article you wrote for the Bondage magazine. I may be wrong, but that's when I discovered that you were coming out with your book, The Bedside Companion.
Yep.
And and then years later, I was on AOL, American Online, and I happened to come across a link or something to Raymond, who was, I forget how we connected or something like that, but I connected to you, or basically I sent a message to you saying how much I enjoyed your Bedside Companion. And the next thing I knew, Raymond was connecting to me and talking to me for a few minutes. And I was one of the first few people in the world that knew that Raymond was going to be the next James Bond continuation author. and this was about 1994, I think, maybe. I don't know.
No, it would have been
95.
I mean, it wasn't really revealed until spring of '96.
Okay, so there
I
was
mean,
96 then.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
shortly before the announcement. I know that, and I felt very flattered that I knew that much information. Although you did tell me to keep it quiet, which I did, but it was fun.
Wow, I'm surprised that anybody would have known because I had to keep my mouth shut. Um, I don't remember that, but
Well, I
yeah.
kept I kept the transcript that we communicated back and forth on AOL, so I
Oh,
still
really?
have
You'll
that
have to send
somewhere.
that to me.
Oh yeah, I will. I'll do that. But anyway, we got to know each other years later. I bought some of your books to some of your signings at the Spy Museum, and
Right.
the last time we saw each other was when you and Jeffrey Deaver were there, and
Yeah.
you had that collaboration of other short stories. So my question to you, which I thought was kind of interesting, I thought was that you, when you had your first James Bond novel to read, and when you were 9, do you remember which one it was?
Yeah. It was Dr. No.
Dr. No? Okay.
Um, I'd actually picked up Goldfinger because I had just seen Goldfinger. So I picked that up at the store and started reading that. And the first chapter just kind of threw me because it was so different. And it just kind of was kind of, well, I don't know if I like this. And then I looked at Dr. No and I picked that one up and I started reading that. And that I got into that immediately. I guess it was just sort of the beginning is much more accessible for a nine-year old.
Well,
Uh,
you pointed that
and
out.
I loved it.
You
Yeah,
pointed that out with
and I
the Fleming.
go ahead.
The Fleming sweep is what you pointed out before, and that's probably what Dr. No is such a fast-moving book, in my opinion, because I read that in a
Yeah,
day. I was so much into it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And earlier in this, I said that From Russia with Love is probably my favorite novel. But if somebody who'd never read Fleming comes to me and say, "What book should I read if I'm only going to read one?" I would say Dr. No,
Yeah.
just because I think that kind of capsulizes the whole thing. It's sort of a quintessential Fleming Bond book.
So now that you're coming out with the new Felix Leiter book, now this is a novel or a novella. What is that? Is it a
It's a
novel?
novel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the announcement said that there will be paperbacks, but there's no hardback?
Not at this time. They're coming out with a paperback, just like how they did the recent Zero Minus 10 and the reprint of Colonel Sun
Okay.
and the John Pearson book, because they're their own publisher now, and that's the format that they're doing. Um, there could be maybe, in the future, maybe a year from now or something, but they might decide, okay, now we're going to do a limited edition hardcover or something. Who knows? I really don't know what their plans are. But that's what it is.
Okay, well, I'll have to keep an eye out for your any signings so that way you can get me to sign that and get you to sign the book when I buy it.
Sure.
So, in the future, I know like I said, we said this about 10 years ago, but if you ever want to use my name for one of your evil characters in one of your books, feel free to. I'm more than happy to allow you to adapt it.
Well, I did that a lot in my Bond novels. A lot of my friends are in them, just like
Tom
a lot of Ian
Zielinski,
Fleming's friends are in his books.
Paul Back,
I
and
kind of,
Tom Zielinski.
yeah, yeah. Paul Bach is in there, and um, several friends. John Cork, I think, is an alias of Bond. He was really pleased with that. Um, so, yeah,
All right. Well, great to see you again. Thanks for coming.
yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Matthew, you got your hand up again. Are you still
Yes.
Matthew?
Hello. I thought of a couple of quick questions. First off, do you think the like John Gardner novels and the Fleming films, do you think they are like Fleming's what Fleming envisioned Bond?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you
So
repeat
like
it?
yes, the other novels by John Gardner and other people, do you in the films particularly, do you think that those embodied what Fleming wanted to portray Bond as? Like
Well, some of the books definitely. I think Anthony Horowitz was quite good. I and felt like, you know, they felt right. For me personally, I don't want to, we're all a big family under Ian Fleming Publications. We're all brothers and sisters in the as Bond authors. So, once I became an author, I don't we don't criticize each other at all. I mean, um, I think Charlie Hickson did a fantastic job, especially with his young Bond stuff. Is what was wonderful. Samantha Weinberg's Moneypenny books I thought were really really good. I love those. Um, so everybody's got their strengths, and I liked John Garner's stuff, a lot of it. We were friends. What can I say? As far as the movies, I mean, they've gone through so many different styles and tones. You had serious ones, you had comic ones, kind of depended on who was playing Bond as to how faithful they were to the books. Um, so, you know, it's that's the beauty of the James Bond universe. There's something that seems like for everybody. Some people like the more serious, down to earth Bond. Some people like the glamour, fantastic Bond, and more comical stuff. It's been around a long time.
Yeah, thank you. And then my other question, sir, what was it like writing Hitman 47? Did you enjoy that?
Oh, yeah, I wrote a Hitman book. Yeah, I worked for them for a year. I enjoyed it. Sure, it was a job, you know. So I was asked to do it, and I said sure. And I played the game a little bit. I wasn't good at playing those games because I'd always die.
They're hard.
But I had to tell them, I had to come up with like three sort of possible storylines, brief pagers, one pagers. And they picked the one they liked the best, and that's the one we went with. Um, that was, gosh, 2011 and 12 that I wrote that. So I don't really even remember much about it. Um, I can remember my original books, but my tie-in books, I don't. I kind of write them and then forget about them.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Bill, can I just say something? I just want to say that I saw Stuart this week. I was in DC, the DC area, and I went with Stuart to the National Museum of the Marine Corps, and also he took me to the Prince George's Park, right?
Prince William.
Prince William. Yeah, I'm sorry. He showed me the trails where Ian Fleming and Bill Donovan created the trained OSS agents. That's pretty cool.
Oh, fascinating. I'd love to go there myself. So
yeah.
Maybe one day, Stuart, you can show that to me as well.
It will be very brief because there's really not much there anymore. It's a national park, and a lot of people go there to walk the trails primarily. But there is a visitor center that you can go into, and they have like a small little portion of the wall of the history of the park, and when the OSS came down there to do their first years of training, because it was totally out of the way.
I just want to say I talked to my cousin who was at Quantico. He ran there in Prince William Park, and he saw the obstacle courses that that they trained on. So there's an area by I think the river where or somewhere in the woods where there's the obstacles they trained on.
Great, I'd like to see that myself because I haven't seen that.
Manna, you've got a question, I think, for Raymond.
I do indeed. Hi, Raymond. Pleasure to meet
Hi.
you. I'm just wondering, I run a book club, and we're concentrating on the John Gardner novels at the moment. How daunting was it when you first got the gig, uh, following in the footsteps of Fleming and Kingsley Amis and Gardner?
Well, it was a little nerve-wracking. I mean, I was asked to do it. I did not ask to do it. I was asked to do it. Um, and at first I thought, gee, can I do this? Do I have the ability? But I had written a first novel. It's the proverbial first novel that you hide in a desk drawer. But Peter had read it. This was in the late 1980s. I wrote a mystery novel, a detective story, and I asked him, "Would you read it?" And Peter read it, and he had some very good notes and observations. But I think, we both agreed that this is the proverbial first novel you put in a drawer and don't let come out. But I think he saw that I could begin a novel and, more importantly, finish it, because a lot of people start novels and never finish. And so he had that in mind. And then I was doing all this computer game fiction writing, coming up with vast, complicated stories, and the descriptions and the dialogues and all that stuff. So, and he knew that I knew the Bond universe really well, inside and out. So I know he took a chance, and I'm sure probably the Fleming family and other people were probably going, "Are you sure? Are you crazy? What, you want to ask this guy?" But he did, and I had to kind of audition. I had to come up with the an outline for a story first. That had to be approved by Glidrose, the British publisher, and the American publisher. Once that was approved, I had to write the first 4 chapters, and this was all on spec. And that also had the same approval process. So once that was all done, they were happy, and I got the contract and to write the book. And then, it was for one book, and then once I had done 0 - 10, they expanded the contract to more books. So it worked.
Well, it sounds like quite an intense process. John Gardner wrote 16 Bond books, including the adaptations between 1981 and 1996, so over a period of 15 years. And you did 12 books over a
Not
period of
nine.
5 years.
I did 9 plus 3 short
That's right,
stories.
yeah. Sorry. That's right, yeah. So how was that process for you? It sounds really intense.
It was a roller coaster. I mean, it was just, you write one book and then you immediately start the next one. And this includes, the outline was required. And that's the hardest part for me. In fact, that's how I do all my books, even non-bond. I do an outline first. They say in writing that you're either a plotter or you're a pantser. That is, if you're a plotter, you plan first, you do an outline, or you plot out the book first, or you write by the seat of your pants. You're a pantser. You just sit down and you write. Stephen King is a famous pantser. Um, and I admire people that can do that. That's an amazing thing you can be able to do. But I don't know, with thrillers and mysteries, I don't know. I feel like you have to plot it out first. You got to know where you're going. You got to know how it ends. You got to know who the killer is, that kind of thing. I didn't want to make it up as I went along. So, but you do that in the outline stage, where it's all little block paragraphs, and you can throw something out that you don't like instead of throwing out a whole paragraph chapter that you've written, over a week. So it's actually a good tool to use. It's like blueprints for a building. You wouldn't build a building without blueprints. So I look at the outline as the blueprints for a novel. It's like the map that you use. So that takes a couple of months to do for me. And then there's the research. And back in those days, I would travel to all the locations of my books. So I'd spend, 2 to 3 weeks going to all the locations that I had planned out. And then I'd come back and start to write. And usually the writing took about 4 months. And then it went through an editing process. And then I immediately, once it was accepted and on its way, that was usually 5 to 6 months before publication. But then I would start the outline for the next book. So it was just like a treadmill. And then what complicated it was the novelizations being thrown in. I had to sort of like, put aside the facts of death and suddenly do Tomorrow Never Dies. And the same thing with Double Shot. I had to put it aside. I'd started it, but I had to put it aside and do The World Is Not Enough. And then there were the short stories that kind of popped in every now and then. So it was very much a full-time job.
Perfect. One final question, if I may, very quickly. What's your attitude to AI? A lot of creative people are a bit apprehensive about it. What's your attitude?
Well, for writing especially, I'm totally against it. I know that AI has stolen a lot of my material, a lot of authors' material. It's already been revealed that certain AI companies have taken authors' books to use as training for AI, and that's against the law. And I know that there's going to be some class action lawsuits about that coming up. So I'm against it in that regard. Now, AI can be used for some good things, and in visual arts and stuff. I can see it being used in a good way. And in certain computer aspects, some kind of communication things, it can be useful. But for creativity, I don't know. I think the human brain can be more creative, at least right now.
I think sorry to interrupt. I think from a technical standpoint, AI could be good, but yeah, not from a creative one.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that at all.
Sorry. I was going to say, I think, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say, from a technical standpoint, I think AI could be good, but like in terms of kind of writing technical things, but from a creative point of view, no. And from an emotional point of view,
yeah. For technical writing, things like that, it's probably pretty good if it gets all the facts right. It kind of depends on where it's gotten its information, where it's gotten its training in that regard.
What part of your writing was taken for training purposes?
I have no idea.
Huh.
I just know that the titles of the books that were used.
Which titles were?
All of them.
All of them. Jeez.
All of them.
Sorry to hear that.
Yep. It's happened to a lot of people, a lot of famous authors and not so famous authors and people you've never heard of.
Dave, there you are.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Hi. Yeah. Like Phil, I had the pleasure meeting you way back when in the armories, but I was just a guy in a queue. We had something signed. My question is, like many people in the UK around the late 80s, we got Your Bedside Companion, and it was our Bible. We'd read it. It was probably one of the only sources we had back then. Anytime since then and up to this point, did you ever had any aspirations to revisit it and revise it, or do a volume 2? Or
well, once I became a Bond author, that kind of went out the window because it just wouldn't have been ethical for me to suddenly be a critique, to critique other authors' books or even the films once I was on the other side of the line and working for Bond. So it just wouldn't have been right. And so it's going to always be a relic of the 1980s. That's what it is.
I guess that aside, would it be, I guess it's something, because say you've gone the other side now, it's something even if you wanted to visit it, you wouldn't touch it.
Well, when it was released as an ebook, in 2012.
Okay.
I did go through it and make a lot of corrections to it because there were some errors. There were some factual errors in it in the 80s that, due to facts being uncovered in the interim or things that I learned that, weren't correct that I had put. So I corrected a lot of stuff. And there were a lot of, other little things, little typos maybe and stuff like that. So the ebook has been corrected. So there are some like new things in it
Okay.
that are kind of subtle, I guess. You'd have to really kind of compare both versions. And then I also wrote an introduction to that ebook, a new introduction. So there is that.
Okay.
That was my revisit to it.
Oh, okay. Cool. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
You still agree with all the critiques you wrote for the Bedside Companion 40 years ago?
Oh gosh, I was really young then. I was a smart ass Bond fan critic. You know,
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. I would say 90% I still agree with. Maybe I would change my mind on some things, or I'd be a little less harsh on some things. John Gardner and I had a talk about that. And we came to an understanding. I'll just put it that way and leave it there.
The reason why I raised my hand again is it occurred to me the copyright on the literary bond runs out in about 10 years. What do you think will happen then? We're going to get a rush of Bond novels from everyone and their dog?
I have no idea. I don't know. Don't ask me. That's above my pay grade. I don't know.
Okay. That's
I
all
really
I have.
don't know. Yeah.
Dave mentioned again about you being at the Royal Armouries, and I was one of those people in the queue was at that one, and I did get my copy of 0-10 signed by you then, but unfortunately, in one of my moves, when I was in London, that got lost, and that's been one of the things that's really upset me over the years of losing my signed copy of 0-10.
Somebody got it on eBay, I bet.
It's somewhere out there, but I mean, if I do send you a copy, I've got another first edition copy of 0-10. If I send that to you, would I be able to get that signed by you?
I'm happy to do it as long as you pay postage both ways, and
yeah.
it can be very expensive now going from the U.S. to the U.K. The prices have just skyrocketed, and who knows with all everything that's going on. I'll just leave it at that. What kind of pricing postage is going to be? But sure, if you want to do that, just contact me, and I'll give you the address and all that kind of stuff.
Are you going to be in the UK again?
I was just there in November. We're talking about me coming over in the fall, about when the book comes out. So it's possible. It kind of depends on the climate of what's going on, whether it's good to travel. So it's possible I'll be there in the fall. Can't guarantee it at this point.
David, you've got another question, I think. Have you?
You're muted.
You're muted.
We can't hear you.
There you go.
No, yeah. We'll let Vinny go because he's been waiting a while and I've already asked one. So I think to be fair, let's let him go
Okay,
first.
yeah, okay. That was next up. Vinny, yes, indeed.
Oh, hi, Raymond.
Hi.
I wanted to ask which of the novelizations of Bond did you enjoy writing the most?
Tomorrow Never Dies. I think that's my favorite of the three. It's also my favorite of the Pierce Brosnan movies. Not just because I novelized it, but also I think I had more freedom with that one,
Okay.
and it was just more fun to write. The other two were a bit of a chore, and they were coming at times when I was like kind of crazed with all the other stuff going on, in between books and, and other stuff. It was all still very new to me when I did Tomorrow Never Dies. I was in the middle of the second book, and the first one had just come out, and here I am on the set of the movie. And it was all very exciting. You know, so yeah, I was more into it. To write that one. So I have a fondness for that one.
Well, that's good. What did you enjoy the most about writing Tomorrow Never Dies then? Was it fleshing out more things that weren't explained in the film?
It's hard to say. I liked the story. I liked being able to add stuff to it. Um, I enjoyed being on the set. It was only 8 weeks, so I would say the whole shebang was was the most enjoyable. I couldn't pinpoint any particular aspect of it.
Okay. Oh, thank you for answering, Raymond.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, definitely. No, that was really interesting. Thank you.
David, do you want to?
I don't know if I'm live. Can I talk now?
Oh,
Does anybody hear me?
Who's that?
yeah. John Christmas. Yeah, he can go absolutely because I've been. I'll let this gentleman go if that's okay.
Oh, okay. Am I on now?
Yes, you are.
Hello, Raymond. Great to meet you and great to see you here. This caught me
Hi.
a bit by surprise, and I'm not sure if I can stay online because I'm in Europe and putting my kids to sleep. But, I'm a huge Bond fan, and I signed up for this. I mean, I clicked on Facebook. I saw it somewhere, and I clicked for this. But I see you're doing events in Park Ridge, Illinois. I'm from Oak Park, Illinois, but I've been living in Europe for 20 years. That's fantastic. How did you wind up in Illinois?
Well, it was a computer gaming job that brought me here in the early 90s. I had talked earlier about that I was designing and writing computer games after the Bedside Companion in the late 80s and early 90s. And I worked for 3 or 4 different companies. I moved around, and a company in the Chicago area recruited me, and we moved here. And I got here in '93, and my family joined me in early '94, and we've been here since. Um, it
Great.
kind of worked out.
Something funny. I have one spy book out, and actually the character is our protagonist. We say he's from Park Ridge. I co-wrote this. I'm a bank whistleblower, and I co-wrote this with a professional writer, and it's about Russian mafia bank fraud in Eastern Europe. But we have the protagonist. We disguised him, but instead of saying he was from Oak Park, we said he was from Park Ridge. So I thought that was kind of funny. And am I correct? Are you the one who wrote the Bond book about the cult in Cyprus where they were following the theory of Pythagoras?
Yes, that's the Facts of Death.
I love that book. That was, I read it some years ago, but I thought it was fantastic. It kind of sticks in my head. I thought it was like a super setup for the cult organization.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I went to Greece and Cyprus to research all that too. And this guy named Panos Sambrakos, who some of you may know his name as a Bond fan online and social media. We became friends in the '90s, and he helped with a lot with the Greece part of it, and kind of was my guide. And it was kind of his idea to come up with the Pythagorean thing. He kind of played around with it. He suggested something like that, and we tossed it back and forth, and I developed it, and so that's
I
why he
remember it
gets.
was very clever. They had some slogan about like all for one and one for all, but it was something about the Pythagoras theory. It was very clever. I live in that part of the world. I live in Malta.
Oh, okay. I've never been to Malta. I only know it from Robert Altman's movie Popeye.
Yeah, we have a big movie business here, and that Popeye is still open like a children's park. But they have a modern film industry here now. I mean, they've done some of the uh, Brad Pitt movies, some of the Gladiator 1 and the new one, Gladiator 2. They've done some of those here, but the big movie that kind of kicked it all off was Popeye.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Including at one point, if I remember correctly, the largest water tank in Europe. For
Yes,
shooting
they have a
ships.
they have a big water tank area where they can do ship battles. So if you want to have like a pirate ship battle in a movie, they have a big tank for that.
Cutthroat Island was shot there.
Well, there's a long list of them. I've actually gone to some film events in Malta, and I've got a whole list of all of the movies they ever filmed here, starting way back with Sinbad the Sailor. And I've been watching some of the older ones, and I'm planning to kind of get caught up to the current day. But the latest one, Gladiator 2, was here, and Sir Ridley Scott has done a number of movies here, not just. There was another one that was in between Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2. What was it? There was Troy with Brad Pitt. There was another Ridley, Napoleon. That was recent. That was like 2 years ago. The Napoleon movie by Sir Ridley Scott also was here.
And one of the Jurassic World movies shot on Malta.
Yeah, Jurassic World. Also, a little bit of some of the James Bond movies. They say a little bit of The Spy Who Loved Me, or there's some films that were not James Bond, but with Sir Roger Moore has been here a couple times to do other movies that were not James Bond movies. But there are some that are kind of cult favorites in Malta when Roger Moore was here.
Evil Under the Sun, Guy Hamilton.
Yeah. The latest indie shot parts in Malta.
The latest what?
The latest Indiana Jones. Had some
I'm
scenes
not
on
sure about Indiana Jones. I'm not sure if you're correct about that one, but
maybe it was
what else?
Sicily.
I mean, there were a few Brad Pitt ones. It was World War Z and Troy and By the Sea. Also, there were a few Agatha Christie movies that they did here not so long ago. There was one with Johnny Depp. Those were sort of the most famous ones, but they're trying to line up new ones all the time. It becomes a controversy because the government spends stupid amounts of money attracting the movies. Like with Gladiator 2, they gave so much money to subsidize the producers that it seems that the country overall lost money on the deal because they were so excited to get Gladiator 2, they would pay anything to incentivize the producers to do it here.
Guys, I just want to say thank you. It was nice to see you. Nice to meet you, Mr. Benson. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, Matt.
All right, Take care.
I'm gonna head off as well, guys, because I've got work in the morning. So I'm gonna shoot off now.
Night,
but thanks for inviting Mr. Benson on. It's good to talk to you, Raymond. But yeah, good luck with the book.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Take care, everyone. Have a good evening.
Stephen.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Stuart. Bye.
So Raymond,
sorry.
So now I can reveal a lot of secrets about the book.
I was just going to say, are you happy to keep going for a while yet, Raymond? Or
for a few more minutes, 10 more minutes.
Okay. I've got another comment. I've got an idea for you, Raymond. Have you ever met another Bond author who is Anthony Horowitz?
I've never met him personally.
Well, no. I met him, and the reason I met him is he was here in Malta in November because they have something called the Malta Book Festival, and they invite they invite more than one prominent author each year to do talks. I mean, he did 2 workshops for adult professional writers. he also did some workshops for children because they bring school children in to meet the authors. So he did a few presentations here, and I don't know what kind of package they gave him to incentivize him to come down here, but he was one of the feature people who came down for the 2024 Malta Book Festival. And I don't know if there's any process, like if you would send an email to them and if they might be interested, because every year they're looking for new authors to invite to Malta to be speakers at Malta Book Festival. Since they got Anthony, I'm sure they'd be interested in you.
Well, if they asked me, I'd be interested probably to check it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know one organizer there actually, so I can even mention to him that I've met you online and suggest that and say that, yeah, Horowitz was very popular last year. And, they're always trying to find someone exciting and everybody loves Bond. So that would be interesting.
Okay. Well, sure. Talk to your guy.
Have you done any work in children's writing or young adult?
Not really. No.
Well, something he was doing is he has some of his writing is targeted at younger readers. So I guess for him, it was the older people loved the James Bond stuff. But then also when he was talking to classroom groups, he has this popular character, Alex Rider, I think is his character with the big series.
Right.
So that was a thing that he was talking about as well.
Yeah. That's probably his most popular thing.
Last question.
Well, yeah.
Just last question, and I'll leave it here. Sorry to interrupt you, John. Sorry about that. Raymond, just very quickly, what do you want to see in Bond 26?
I just hope that they keep up the quality control, and that it's they keep Ian Fleming in mind.
Cool, because I want to see a flying car.
That's a different Ian Fleming story.
Bang bang. Surely.
Yeah, we've already got one of those.
Nice one. Okay, cheers, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Benson.
David. Take care.
Cheers, Phil. Thank you.
Chris Schofield, I think you've got another question.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Philip. And thank you again. Raymond, when I growing up, obviously I was a big fan of the Bond films and the books that I was introduced to by my dad. Obviously, you said before that you write about sort of spy, but obviously detective type things. I'm a big fan of sort of American detective or investigative writing, like Ed McBain and Ace Atkins and Robert Lee Parker, that kind of stuff. I've eaten up for fun. Who were your contemporary sort of like people that you enjoyed as a young person and perhaps even now, or is it like a busman's holiday now, read the book?
Yeah, well, Ian Fleming is probably my number one, but I really loved Ruth Rendell, and I knew her, but I read every single book of hers. She wrote 70 something. I really like a lot of the old sort of hard stuff like Jim Thompson. Jim Thompson, The Killer Inside Me, and The Grifters, and The Getaway, and that stuff. I like James M. Cain. The Postman Always Rings Twice, and Double Indemnity, and that's that old noir stuff. I do like some Raymond Chandler. But contemporary, I really like Michael Connelly. I like Lee Child when he was doing Reacher. I like John Sanford. I like who else do I like?
Raymond Benson.
I'm sorry?
Raymond Benson.
Ed McBain.
How do you like him?
Raymond Benson.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Who? Yeah, who's Raymond Benson?
Some guy named Raymond Benson.
Yeah, I don't read him. I did like Ed McMahon. In fact, I knew him. I knew Evan Hunter.
Oh wow,
when he was alive. Yeah. When I lived in New York, I was very involved with Mystery Writers of America, and he was a member, and he was around. I knew a lot of those guys in the 80s.
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of, I know this is off bottom topic, but if you were given an opportunity to write novelizations of another fictional character, is there one that you would quite, like say for example, Anthony Horowitz has done a Sherlock Holmes novel. Would there be a particular character that you'd like to sort of have a crack at?
I wanted to do Twin Peaks novels.
Really?
I would have loved to do that, but that will never happen.
Just fan fiction then.
Yeah, I guess.
What was it that attracts you to Twin Peaks then?
I'm a big David Lynch fan, but when that show came on in 1990, it was so groundbreaking and different and quirky and eccentric and weird and funny and scary and all those things. And they were very David Lynch as well, and I'm already a fan. So yeah, I think Twin Peaks influenced me a lot for years. After that, I did a computer game in collaboration with H.R. Giger, the guy who designed Alien.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was called Darkseid 2. It was the sequel to another game called Darkseid, but I wrote Darkseid 2. And it was very Twin Peaksy. It kind of took place in a small town, and there was a murder, and it had all this creepy stuff going on, and I fully admit that it was influenced by Twin Peaks.
That sounds like a new Netflix series. Quite a thing. What are your plans for the future after Beyond Leiter?
Oh, that's a good question. Speaking of Twin Peaks,
where's the dwarf?
I'm stuck in the red room.
He's out in the
my evil doppelganger is out in the real world. I don't know. I mean, I'm so concentrated right now on Felix, and I mean, it's done and it's finished, but I'm doing a lot of the promo stuff for it. And Ian Fleming Publications is going to drop a lot of extra value material on their website as the serial goes on that I'm doing with them.
Right.
So,
can I be
that's kind of what I'm doing. And we're going to see how this goes. Right now it's one book, but who knows?
Yeah, can I be cheeky and just ask one more question? Is that you said before that you went to everywhere that you were writing about, in a sense of, so where was the best place that you visited, and where was the worst place that you visited when you were writing your books?
Oh boy. I'm not sure I can name a best place because at least 2 or 3 were great. Japan was great. Spain was great.
In what way?
And Corsica was great. But they were all interesting. The worst was probably, I mean, nothing was bad. Nothing was like, I got to get out of here. So I don't know. I can't say what was bad.
When you've done that though, are you able to sort of, you've gone there to research, are you able to sort of have a moment where you can go, the equivalent is like when I'm working and people go, it must be great when you're driving around everywhere, and I go, no, I don't take anything in because I'm going from A to B. So when you go to these places and you've gone for research, do you have that sort of moment where you can go, I can take a step back and actually appreciate what I'm doing and where I am, or is it all
very few? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, mostly it's very intense because I have a very set schedule, a time, and there is the flight that departs to go home. It's already scheduled. So I have to get a lot done. And beforehand, I have made appointments of people I need to speak to or see.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes trains are arranged from one place to another already in advance. So I have to keep a strict schedule.
Mm.
And and I'm carrying my bags and from place to place. So yeah, it was kind of nerve-wracking, but it was fun at the same time. It was exciting because these were all new exotic places to me. I'd never been there before.
Yeah.
So I met a lot of cool people, saw a lot of great sights, learned a lot, and it was all very stimulating. It was hard to sleep, I was just be wide awake at night. Um, so it was exhausting, but
Yeah.
there were moments, there were times where I had some, a few free hours to do something. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. These are the things that you don't hear about when people are writing books. You know,
Yeah.
I think people assume that, you go to somewhere and it's beautiful or it's busy and everything, you can be immersed into it. But I guess it's literally, you're there for a job and you can't, if you're lucky, you might have 15 minutes on the way between the airport or whatever to go, oh, that's quite nice. And then,
Exactly. Well, just like, well, let's take 0 - 10, for example. When I went to Hong Kong, I had to make an appointment with the Royal Hong Kong Police. This was before, China took it over. I had to convince them to get me in touch with their triad experts, so I could have an afternoon with them and they could show me a bunch of stuff and learn all about the triads. And then I had to find a woman who lived in kind of an apartment that Sonny Pay lived in. So I could see it, just so I could describe it, because I didn't know what that kind of place they lived in. And the tourist board helped out with that. I had to go into China to see, where Bond would hide, the Sun Yat-sen Memorial. Actually went in it. Um, um, just stuff like that. And this was all done in a certain amount of time. I went and gambled at the Macau casino that Bond is in. I played one round of blackjack because it was a very scary place.
Has your process changed at all now that the internet lends more of a hand?
I don't travel as much because you don't have to. See, back then, the internet wasn't as expansive.
Exactly.
Now you can visit places with Google Maps and that little gold guy that you can put down on Street View and walk around a city that you've never been in.
Yeah.
But I think probably, with a lot of my books, I use familiar locations,
Yeah.
places I've lived, New York, Texas, Chicago, I know LA a lot really well, London. So I use those places because I know them, the Felix Leiter book is all places I know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all in America. It's New York, it's Texas, there's a big long road trip in this book, which is kind of fun.
Oh, now you've given away a secret there, haven't you?
Yeah, it is. I've spilled it before. I mean, the tagline of the Felix Leiter book is, it's a mystery, it's a romance, it's a spy story, it's a road trip tale, and it's a postcard to a lost Americana.
Fantastic.
Oh.
That's a perfect follow-on from Living Like That, because I used to think as a when I excuse me, I read it when I was very young, like about 11, 12. And like you said before, a lot of the stuff sort of the more naughtier bits were over my head. Reread the Bond books during lockdown, and it's like a travel log is Living Let Die. It's like basically James Bond and Felix Leiter, just apart from the unfortunate incident, it's like them just like a travel book. It's
well, Diamonds Are Forever is the same way.
Yeah.
The way Felix is just showing him America, and then just they're having a drinking themselves silly and seeing America.
So it is all of the Felix book based in still all steadfast in America.
Yes, it's all in America.
And have you visited these locations, or like Chris said?
Oh yeah,
have you
I've been to all of them. Yes, well, I've either lived in or been to every place that even the road trip. I've been on it 3 times, the same road trip from New York to Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good.
And are you
And
based
there's a
in
national park. There's a national park that plays a big role.
Are you based in New York now?
No, Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, right. I'm currently reading a book about the Blues Brothers, Dan Aykroyd and James Belushi, which is Chicago based, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
Second City. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. No, fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate
You're
you
welcome.
giving me the time for that.
I'm probably gonna have to split, Phil.
No,
Are you still here?
I am still here. I'm still listening. But yes, I just want to thank you very much for joining us this
Thanks very
evening.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, was there like
Much
one more
appreciated.
question? Was there one more question? Anybody that I didn't get?
Graham, come on, you must have one.
I know. I just want to say, well, thank you for coming on, Raymond. It's been delightful listening to you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to the book.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Good luck
All
with the
right.
book.
Well, thank you very much.
When's it going to be released? Because it's actually the first time.
May 27th is the first episode of the ebook.
Oh.
So you know, make sure you have a Kindle or a Nook or whatever you read ebooks on, and
Raymond,
get it that way.
Raymond, I do have a quick question because you've created it. Your book gets released on an ebook first, and then it's later released as paperback in October. What do you prefer? A book or a digital version?
I do both. I read print books, and I read off my Kindle too. Kindle is a great thing for to have because you can load so many books on. I have all the Fleming books on this Kindle.
Yeah.
You know, and so you know it holds a lot of books. It's like a big bookshelf in one little device.
I have a friend who moans the fact that I collect books, and I said to him, if I go on holiday and drop my book in a swimming pool, in a day it'll be dry. You drop your book in the swimming pool, it's gone. All 7,000 of them.
Well, not really, because you can re-download them.
Yeah.
Do they pay the same, whether it's coming out as an ebook or a paperback or a hardback, or is there a difference like for musicians?
There's no difference. There's no difference.
Okay.
Right.
Excellent.
We'll all hold our hands up and we'll all buy a version.
Okay, I hope so. Because IFP wants the ebook serial to succeed because it's something they had thought up and want it to work. You know, they wanted to do the serial kind of like the old pulp kind of things. So we'll see. We'll see if people latch onto that. I hope so. So
yeah. One final
question
for Raymond. In your new Felix Leiter book, does Gigi Sumatra make an appearance?
No, she does not.
Oh no, that's
oh. No, there's nobody else from the Fleming books but Felix. They're all either new characters but I do focus on the prosthesis. I wanted to get the prosthesis right because Fleming always referred to it as a hook. And when I was a kid and I read the books, I envisioned a pirate hook. And that wouldn't be right. He wouldn't be walking around with a pirate hook, He had, a prosthesis that's a pincher. It's kind of like the Harold Russell character in The Best Years of Our Lives. Wouldn't have been too far removed from that. It was only just a few years later,
or a bit like
that movie when it was released. So that's what he had. He had, a Veterans Administration prosthesis. And so I go into detail about how he, learns to use it and what it can do and what it can't do and that stuff. And Fleming never really gave us any information about that. But
I'm slightly disappointed that you don't have baby Cedar Leiter in your book.
No, that would have been way before her time.
Actually, just speaking about the hook, because when I first read Diamonds Are Forever, I think it was when this game mentioned, I did actually look it up on I was actually looking up on Google what a hook from time would look like, so I can picture it in my mind's eye. It is like you said, a pincher-like thing. I was just trying to. So yeah.
And they actually have different terminal devices that do different things that you can switch them off and do different things.
I suppose it's a bit like Teehee's in Live and Let Die.
Yeah,
kinda, but no, not really. If you see the movie The Best Years of Our Lives from 1946, which won the Oscar for Best Picture, there's an actor named Harold Russell who had lost both arms, and he has prosthesis on both arms.
I saw a clip of that chap on telly once, so I do know what you mean. Yeah,
those are exactly what Felix would have.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Raymond. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. Hopefully, you've enjoyed it as well.
Oh yeah, this was fun. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, all the best,
Raymond.
We look forward to reading the new book. So, you take care. Thank you very much, and
good luck.
Thanks, Raymond.
Thank you very much.
Good seeing you, Raymond.
Bye, everybody.